So a divine encounter, my brothers and my sisters, is not a program. It is not a theme. It is not something we just speak about. It is something that must be experienced. And when you experience it, you are never the same again. You know, the Bible tells us in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creation. He said, all things are passed away. Behold, all things have become new. If you wanted to be president before, if that was your ambition, and you have a divine encounter, that ambition dies. It is crushed. It is ruined. It is destroyed. Saul of Tarsus had an ambition. I'm sure he wanted to be in the top echelon of the Sanhedrin. But once he had that encounter, that ambition died. Some people say they don't know that it seemed maybe Paul was married. They don't know whether he was married or not. But that if he was married before, that encounter damaged it. But we don't know that Paul was married. And after that encounter, Paul never got married to anybody. He stayed. So it is believed that Paul was never married, because he never went near any woman. It was such an encounter that radically transformed his life. If you are a Christian, you need to have such an encounter at least once. At least once. So that, you see all this wishy-washy Christianity, it will die. Where we are not able to stand for something, where we are yielding to this making noise. I see Christians making comments on social media, and you're wondering, who are these Christians? What are they saying? I see pastors speaking, trying to appease to the gallery. No meeting with God. They need a divine encounter. And sometimes it is possible to have more than one encounter. But that is usually if there is disobedience on your part. After the first encounter you've had, you are still disobedient, you will have further encounters. Moses had many encounters with God. But there was one encounter that he kept writing about. It wasn't even the one of the burning bush. It was the one in which God told him to go and speak to a rock. And he took his rod and smote the rock twice. Water still gushed out. And God told him, I sent you to do something, you did something else. Sir, you are not going to make it to the promised land. Moses kept begging every time he had an opportunity. Finally, God one day, God said to him, enough. I'm not going to hear this from you. Don't ever say it again. And Moses kept quiet. But Moses kept writing about it. He wrote about it in Deuteronomy. He didn't write about the burning bush in Deuteronomy, but he wrote about this thing in Deuteronomy. It is an encounter. You can never forget it. You will use it as an object lesson to teach other people. The lesson that Moses taught us is no matter how much you have gone with God, make sure you don't disobey him. God can give you another encounter to help you. In the case of Saul of Tarsus, Saul still had another encounter with the Lord. After all that had happened, he said that on one occasion God took him to heaven and he saw things that he couldn't be describing. But that was not really the encounter. The encounter was when he came back to earth. He said God sent to him a messenger from Satan to buffet him. So he went to God and said, Lord, what's going on here? God said, relax. After all I've shown you, the way you are going, you will be too proud. I want you to come. I need you in heaven. So that fellow there is there to keep you in check, to make you know that you are but a man. He said, therefore, I will gladly rejoice in my infirmities, because God told him that when you are weak, then I am strong. Which means when you are strong, I can't do anything. So he says, I would rather remain weak so that God can be strong. That reminds me of a story. I watched this film, Quo Vadis. And there was this captain, Roman captain. His name was Marcus Vinicius. They had this triumphal entry for him. And he was in his chariot. Going ahead of him would be slaves that he had conquered. There will also be slaves, the fatter slaves, that is the kings and so on, will be tied to his chariot at the back. And then some minions will be ahead of him and things like that. But incidentally, in his chariot, with him, was a man, poorly dressed, not dressed in a glorifying way, poorly dressed. But this man held a gold crown over the head of Marcus Vinicius. So as the parade went on, people will be cheering and hailing him as he's waving and recognizing their chairs and, wanting to smile and feel that, yes, I'm a big man. The man who was holding the crown over his head at his back will say, remember, thou art but a man. Remember, thou art but a man. They will continue again. He will sober down. And then the people will be cheering and throwing things at him and everything. He will want to acknowledge, as he's acknowledging their chairs again, the man holding the crown overhead will say to him again, remember, thou art only but a man. In the Roman kingdom, the Roman Empire, their Caesar was considered divine. So they felt that anybody receiving that accolade can very easily get out of his head and think that he can now overthrow the emperor. So they always remind them. They put the laurel over their heads. They don't put it on the head. They just place it over the man's head. And then they have this fellow who can never go near any battle. This wimp, as it were, telling them, you are just a man. So don't think that you are divine. That is something that a divine encounter seeks to achieve. To tell us that we are but mere dust in the hands of a powerful God. And we must not forget that. Moses forgot that and did not enter into the promised land. You must not forget that. You are but a man in the hands of a powerful God. When I look at many of our fathers of the faith today around the world, it's disturbing that they seem not to have learned this lesson. That is why I believe that if they have had a divine encounter, they need to pray for a second encounter. An encounter that will destroy, that will ruin that heart of pride, that will ruin that glory, that desire for glory here on the earth, that will ruin everything that they are glorying in. They need that prayer. As you and I also need that prayer. Brethren, if you and I are going to ever be anything before God and get to eternity intact, we need a divine encounter. The Bible tells us in 2 Timothy chapter 4 verse 10 that Demas, who had been greeting the brethren along with Paul on many occasions, had taken flight to Ephesus. I think it was Ephesus that he went to. Not because he wanted to go and preach the gospel there, but because, like Paul wrote, having loved this world. Oh, it's Thessalonica. Let me read it. 2 Timothy chapter 4 verse 10. It says, for Demas has forsaken me, having loved this present world, and has departed to Thessalonica. Not to go and preach, but to go and enjoy the world. There are many people who are leaving their nations to go overseas, not to preach, but to enjoy this world. Many people have gone to the United States of America, to Britain, to those first world countries, as it were, claiming that they are going for the gospel. But what they are going there for is because they love this present world. Am I saying they shouldn't go? No. I'm saying they should go. But they should understand that they are there to preach the gospel. Such people, they need a divine encounter. It is not in a program. They did an encounter with God one-on-one. I read the story of a world evangelist. At that time, he had gone on missions work. And he came back on follow and attended a church meeting. And at the church meeting, a young fellow was preaching. And he saw the power of God in the message and in the life of that young man. He went home. I think it was T.L. Osborne. T.L. Osborne. He went home and told the wife, I'm going into that room. Lock the door. Don't open that door, no matter how long I stay there, until the Spirit of God speaks to you to open the door. He locked himself in that place and began to pray to God and began to cry to God. No food, nothing in that room. The door was locked by his wife. While he was there, God began to speak to him. You have pride. You have this. You have that. You have... By the time he was through repenting and confessing, the Spirit of God told the wife to go and open the door. When the door opened, the man who came out was not the man who went in. He had encountered with God. Many of us need to shut down this ministry that we say we are doing. We may be general overseers. We need to tell the people we are taking a sabbatical. Go and lock ourselves up and have a meeting with God. And at the end of that encounter, let us see whether we will come back and be saying the kind of things that we are saying. When people can place money on a pedestal that God did not place it, and tell us that Jesus spoke a lot about money. And I asked them, what did Jesus say when he spoke about money? Did he say we should pursue it? Did he say we should go after it? Did he tell us that money is to be elevated above the gospel, above him? Brethren, we need to go to God now. And we need to say, Father, I need to have an encounter with you. One that will alter the course, this trajectory that is not taking me to heaven. This trajectory that is making me worldlier and worldlier each day. I need to have this encounter with you so that my life will be radically transformed. Go ahead now and talk to the Lord. Go ahead